This episode contains bad language. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Notes on Nonsense, the weekly dive into whatever I'm thinking about. So I have kind of taken a break from Notes on Nonsense, just like a 2-week break, but I was struggling with kind of thinking about what particular nonsense was abounding recently in my life or surrounding me. And, you know, you can really pick and think about a lot of things and be like, yeah, it's nonsense. But to get on here and talk about it in a productive way that isn't just a rant, like perhaps last episode was, is difficult. But as luck would have it, I was blessed with a beautiful, beautiful example of a perfect episode of Notes on Nonsense. So today's episode is free rides are nonsense. Now, free rides are also wonderful. And I don't want to go down the path of assuming anything, and we're not going to use this in terms of privilege or scholarships or grants or that kind. That's not what I'm talking about. We're not talking about society. We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about the government, okay? This is a different type of insidious free ride. And I don't, this is not based off of anything other than this particular example, but it can be applied to a lot of different situations and people. And what I mean, so to give you some context, here we go. So I was invited to be a guest on a podcast. Oh, how nice. How lovely. How lovely to not be on this side of the mic for once. You know, I always enjoy it. So I respond to this woman. I'm like, great. I would love to be a guest on your podcast. Now, she sent me her stats and she said she had 3,000 downloads total. For those of you who know, that is not a big podcast whatsoever. But I am of the belief that if someone invites me to be on their podcast and they would like to interview me, I'm going to do it because I have had amazing, amazing people do that favor for me. Like Tony Hawk and Dr. Shafali Sabari and Gary John Bishop, people who didn't have to give me the time of day and they came and sat on my lowly podcast. And so if someone asks me, I usually say yes. I really don't say no unless it's just not a good fit or like it's a political podcast or something I don't want to do. So I was like, sure, I'll be on your podcast. So great. I go to the little calendar, I schedule it, and I'm thinking, okay, this will be fine. Well, anyway, so I get an email. Well, first of all, she had like a waiver that required printing out, signing, and returning. So I told her, I was like, I'm not printing it out. I'm not signing it and returning it. If you have an e-version, fine. Otherwise, I agree to the terms. It's just like there are things that you should not ask of people when you're not in a context like a doctor or a lawsuit or something. Like, don't ask me to print out something and sign it and return it to you for a podcast. Like that was my first red flag. And listen, I am not in the business of calling out people or making fun of people. That's not what this podcast is about, but I want you to hear me very clearly on the lessons of this podcast. That's what I'm getting at. So for anyone who wants to email me and say, that was cruel for you to call, whatever, I don't want to hear it. I do not call out 99.9% of the nonsense people who contact me. This one is stuck in my craw because I think there's a lesson to be learned. So don't tell me that I'm being rude about talking about this person. I'm not calling her out by name. It could be anyone in the world. So I didn't fill out the waiver. So I get an email from her today that said, can you please go to this link and comply, fill out with the rest of the steps for the episode. So I go to the link, I look at it, it's like download, send a headshot, send a bio, like the standard stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I see, please send $68 to cover the cost of promoting your episode because it is expensive to have podcasts edited. This is the cost of the engineers and the sound people to edit your episode. I read it again. She certainly meant she was going to pay me $68, although that would have been a whole new podcast. How wonderful. Actually make money for showing up for something. So I read it again. Please send $68 to cover the cost of me editing your podcast or me paying my people, to edit the podcast. And so I wrote her back and I said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to pass. I'm not going to pay $68 to be interviewed. That doesn't make sense. I just sent a really short email. That was it. That was it for me. And then I get an email response. And here is where I kind of lost it. I don't get fired up about much these days. I really don't. I have learned that, all I can control is the food I put in my face and my attitude. But for some reason, I know the reason, and I'm going to get to that. But this really, really insulted me. So she wrote me back, and I'm recording on my phone, or I would read it verbatim, but I'm going to paraphrase. That way we cannot say that I talked about anyone. It's a paraphrase. She basically said, podcasting is expensive. I could not pay my staff to do some episodes. Sponsorship is hard. So I don't think it's too much to ask a guest to pay for promoting themselves. Okay, so let's rewind to March of 2017. That is almost 3 years ago. And let's fast forward to today, 180 episodes of this podcast later. I have never, ever asked a guest to pay me money to be on the podcast. Every year I renew my hosting fee, which is anywhere from $300 to $500. I pay people to help me when I screw up on an editing, but also I have taught myself to edit podcasts. I have taught myself to upload, to mix, to do all these things. And, sometimes when people comment, like, the sound is not great on the podcast, I'm like, dude, whatever. Like, I've taught myself over the years, this is as good as I got because I've been resourceful. I have built this podcast from nothing to what it is, and I don't get money to do it. I could take sponsors. I choose not to because I find that sponsorships are almost more of a hassle than the return at this phase. Like, unless I can get enough money to, like, make sense for the time it takes to run the ad, coordinate with people, deal with the stuff, and usually they're offering you like $50 for a podcast, and it takes you 30, 45 minutes to 2 hours to mix the ad. And then you're not even, like, your time is more valuable than that. That's kind of how I justify it at this point. So anyway, I don't take ads. I don't take money. At some point I would like to make some ad revenue, but that's not the point of the podcast. The podcast has always been a place to talk, to inspire, to have a platform, to meet new people, and to have opportunities. So I have always looked at every opportunity to speak with a guest as an opportunity, God forbid. And so to get a response from this woman that is attempting to school me in the ways of podcasting, and like I haven't experienced this myself, and then to tell me in a sentence, there are times when I could not pay my staff. And I thought, wait a fresh second, where's my staff? And yes, I have a web designer and a marketing gal that I pay hourly, but they are not my staff. When I have projects, I'm like, hey, I need your help. You're in, you're out, And so all of this, just... it made my head explode. So I wrote her back and I said, I have over 1 million downloads. I have never, ever asked this. I think that what you're doing is not only extremely unprofessional, but I think it's bordering on unethical for people who you are actively seeking to include as a guest. Like, you're telling them your story is great, you're valuable, and then you're asking them for money. It is so trashy. I didn't say trashy, but in my mind, I'm like, trashy. Oscar trashy. So yeah, I just told her good luck. And I don't know. I hope to God she doesn't respond to me. I don't want to discuss this anymore because I'm so offended on so many levels. And I thought, you know what? The universe is beautiful. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was supposed to do my notes on nonsense tomorrow. And I was really struggling with what I wanted to talk about. And then I thought, thank you, universe, for giving me my topic. And this is what I want to talk about. So that's the story. And this is the lesson. The lesson about free rides are nonsense. Because we all need a help every once in a while. We all need someone to boost us, to give. Yes. And that's what I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about privilege, and I'm not talking about welfare programs, and I'm not talking about big brother, big sister in church. And I'm talking about when you have a goal and you have something you're working towards, like a podcast, like a book, like a coaching program, whatever it is that you are working on, you should own it. And you should put in the time, the money, the effort to build it. And you should do it for free. For free until you are justified for charging for it. And you should never charge someone who isn't in the mix and is not receiving the benefit of your whatever it is you're doing. So she's arguing to me that I'm receiving a marketing benefit from her podcast. And listen, I will gladly pay Lewis Howes, Rich Roll, Armcherries, Dak Shepard, $68 to be on their podcast. I'd pay a lot more than that. And maybe people do. That's not the problem. The problem is when you don't have the reach and you don't have the clout and you don't have, people pay for advertising all the time, but this is like a situation where she's not absorbing the cost and she's not absorbing the struggle and what it takes to project herself forward in the podcasting world. And it's not a matter of, oh, you got to pay your dues, but don't ask me for money to build your dream. That drives me crazy. And maybe it is a little old school of me. And maybe it is because of the fact that I have done for 10 years, I've blogged without ad revenue. I've podcasted without ad revenue. And I've paid people for publicity and been burned. And I've lost so much money trying to just get my message out there and trying to make something of myself outside of the legal profession. And to actually be approached by someone about a podcast and then for them to charge me money, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong here. But sometimes when I think I'm so fired up about something, I know I'm not wrong because it's so ingrained in me. There's so many things that are so wrong about it to me. And what bothers me most, I think this is, thank you for allowing me to talk this through and for still listening. But I think where I'm most bothered by this is that early on in the game, when I was trying to get myself, known, like on Facebook back in 2008, 2010, because I had a mom blog before the triathlon blog, you would have people who would take $25 to post a link to your blog. And I've been down that road where you're like, hey, can I pay someone a little something to just get a leg up? To just do anything. But that is different because that is me trying to make an investment, right? To try and make myself better, to try and move the ball forward. And this podcaster instead is asking me to pay for her editing, which in turn is moving her forward. I'm not going to get much benefit out of a podcast that has 3,000 total downloads across all episodes. That means I'm probably going to get 35 listens. And maybe one person will, if you get a 10% return, I'm going to get 3 people who buy my book. In the modern world of books, I make about $3 on that. So, to say that she's giving me some incredible benefit is annoying the hell out of me tonight, you guys. It really is. It's driving me up the wall. And so what I wanted to talk about on Notes on Nonsense is free rides are nonsense. Yes, it's great when we can get a leg up. And God, I am thankful for the giants whose shoulders I have been able to so far stand on. I have not been able to stand on real giants yet. But I have been on enough big people that I am eternally grateful. And those have been, in a sense, a free ride. But I'm talking about the mindset, you guys, the mindset of being entitled or to not have to pay something or to not have to learn something and to charge someone else for it. And maybe there's not a lot of examples that I can think of on the fly about this, but I look at it as kind of a sense of entitlement that you have a dream. And in order to accomplish your dream, you're not willing to sacrifice the $68 it's going to take for you to move your dream forward. You're not going to find a way to cover the $68 that it costs to publish an episode, which I think why this really bothers me is because I know that that's bullshit. I know I edit my own podcast. I have spent hours learning how to do this. And so I know it can be done. I also know that I could also farm out my podcast editing, mixing, and all of that for probably $100 an episode. I could, but putting out the number of episodes I put out, that's an extra expense. And so I could look at that and be like, okay, that's $500 a month. And where's that going to come from? Oh, I should ask my guests. No. Like, so it's a choice. And everything that we do comes down to a choice. You get to choose what is a priority to you. And when people choose something like asking a guest to pay them money on a podcast, you chose wrong. You chose wrong on so many levels. You're a bad example. You're a bad entrepreneur. You're despicable. Like, it's despicable. And it's not because I can say no. I said no. But she's like literally preying on people who are just hoping to get a leg up. That's all. I don't like it. I don't like it. Like, part of me wants to like post the name of the podcast, but I'm not going to do that because, again, this is not about me outwardly glass houses, man. I am not perfect. I'm not even pretending like I am. I do stupid things. I've done stupid things. But you know what? Most of the time, someone's called me out on my bullshit. And I'm grateful for that. It's hard at the time. And so, you know what? Maybe she's going to hear this. And maybe she'll continue to defend herself. Because she came right back at me. I sent a screenshot to my friend and said, hey, get out your popcorn because this is getting good. Because it's insane to me. It's absolutely insane to me. So the lesson, I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I've said it. Maybe I'm wrong. But the lesson in this is if you have a dream and you want to change your life and you want to do something differently, stop expecting other people to comp your ride. They're not going to do it. I mean, maybe you'll be lucky. Maybe. But the expectation, and go back like 10 episodes and listen to Expectations Are Nonsense. The expectations that we are having many times that someone's going to come along and save us, pick up our book, make it a New York Times bestseller, pot calling the kettle black. Look, I desperately want a celebrity to pick up my book and to just post it on Instagram. Do you know what that would do for my book? It would make it a bestseller. That's all it takes. I'm literally 1 degree away from someone doing that and my life changing forever. But you can't control that. I'm not going to get a free ride. So instead, I'm out there hustling and I'm out there podcasting for free. And I'm doing things that I know to do to move my needle. And so that is what the challenge is. The challenge is, what are you waiting on? What are you doing right now that is, in a sense, asking life to be a guest on your podcast and then charging life money? What are you doing currently that is not moving your needle forward and is actually causing you to be kind of viewed as unprofessional? There's no way I'm the only one that thinks this is unprofessional. There's no way. And so in my mind, now every time I see this person, I don't know if I ever will, but I'm going to be like, there's that gal. There she is. And you know what? The irony is she'll probably like do a viral TikTok and like pass me in notoriety, fame, and fortune, like all of it. You know, that's life is funny. So if I'm wrong for this Notes on Nonsense, the universe will respond accordingly. But I really do believe the universe was giving me a gift today because it was too funny. It was too funny. And then I just want to really challenge any of you with a dream. Because 10 years ago, I was lost and out of control and really thought there was no way out. And here I am, 10 years later, lost, more in control, and knowing that there's always a way out. And I don't have it all figured out, but I do know that there's not a free ride. There are people that are helped. Like Mr. Rogers always says, look for the helpers. There are people that are helping. There will help you. I am a helper. I am glad to help someone promote their podcast by having me as a guest, if that is helpful to them. Of course, I am a Z-list and I may not be helpful, but for someone who's an extra lower Z-list who's just starting out, I might be a catch. So I'm glad to help. And so you have to look for people like me in certain situations, right? And someone is always willing to mentor, to help. Not everyone is, but someone is. And so that's not a free ride. That is called humanity. That is called being a good steward of your talents and helping people in the best way you can. I don't have a problem with that. That's not what this is about. This is about not stepping forward, paying your own dues, forcing the situation for your own dreams to move forward when there's no one else to help you. That's what I'm talking about. There will be people to help, but you can't ask people to cover your shit. You can't ask people to take up your flag and carry it for you. You got to carry your own damn flag. Carry your own damn flag. Look around, see if anyone's there to help you, but don't ask them to carry your flag for you. You got to carry your own damn flag. So that's it. That's this Notes on Nonsense. Have a great week, everyone.